if indeed the Ayatollah Khamenei is dead, was that a good thing? Is that a good thing? Was it a justified escalation of force to eliminate a dictator? And, I don't claim to be an expert on Iranian internal politics. I think I know a fair amount, but, he definitely was not a good man. He was definitely not a well-regarded man. And so, I think it's totally fair to just say that he was a fairly brutal, ruthless dictator. But, I also think it's worth noting that he perhaps was not, like history's greatest monster or anything either. I think that kind of thing is, important to keep in mind because, what I want to talk about is people who, I think there's a certain hypocrisy sometimes where people, on the one hand, I'm thinking kind of like people more on the extreme side of politics, of political engagement, where they basically like think they have to be engaged, 1000% in everything, or else you're, you're aiding and abetting evil, and you can never just let anything be as it is, and like you have to be constantly pushing, which you consider to be morally right, with all the power that you can muster. I find that a lot of people like that, even though they kind of have the attitude of, you know, all that is required for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. They have that kind of attitude about everything. And so they think that like you can't just be kind of neutral about something. You can't just, sit out a conflict because you have to take sides and you have to try to use whatever power you have to accomplish what you see as the moral good, or I guess with these people arguing that see as the moral good, and so they condemn people they see as like fence sitters and that kind of thing. They don't like that. They think you have to be fully committed to everything all the time, or else you're basically allowing evil to flourish and to propagate and to take over and become all the more powerful. And I then people. This is people who believe all kinds of different things. It's not like this is just one side of the political spectrum or anything like that. This is I've seen this from lots of different people, but a lot of these people I find that they also are non-interventionalists. Like in foreign affairs and like in foreign wars and things, which is totally fine. I mean, I would in general, that's kind of how I would classify myself. I would say that just generally speaking, it is better for it's better. I mean, just for any nation, but like for the United States, I think it is better that we try to that we don't involve ourselves in foreign conflicts as to the extent that we do. I mean, obviously, you do have to keep on top of global conflicts, and you have to protect your interests and everything. That's totally fair. But there's also definitely a point where it becomes excessive and self-defeating, because then you're just involved in all these quagmires and just like misguided military enterprises that you didn't need to be engaged with in the first place, because it's not really our problem in the first place. That's kind of just like broadly speaking in the broad historical context. I'm just based on my knowledge of the United States and our history with Iran. That's kind of how I would, that's kind of my attitude, is that like we never even really needed to be so adversarial with Iran. I don't think it was ever. I don't think we should have let it get to this point in the first place. And so then, like, in the here and now, is it good to try to topple, like the current Iranian government? And like, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know that I know the situation well enough to judge that. Right. Kind of my feeling right now, my sentiment is that at this point, if we can eliminate eliminate the Islamic Republic of Iran as a government, and put in place like a more moderate pro-American government, affect like a regime change that would at least hopefully be beneficial for us. That's probably so that'd probably be good, if it can be accomplished with a bare minimum of bloodshed on our side, and it can be if it can be done quickly and relatively cleanly, and if it is a if we actually get it done, for one thing, because like how often has something along these lines happened where we get into like a scuffle with Iran, and then ultimately nothing comes of it. And I mean, I know now they're claiming like Khamenei is dead, and we'll see. I mean, it sounds like I would wager that that's probably true right now, because I don't know that I don't think Trump and and Israel would commit to that such a bold, decisive claim saying that he is dead and they did kill him. I don't know if I would. I don't know. I don't think they would commit to that right now if they weren't confident in it, because that would be enormously embarrassing if it turned out to be false, wouldn't it? That'd be like a devastating political misstep, and honestly, I think they're smart enough to avoid that. Yeah. So, right now we could probably would be a good idea to eliminate the Iranian regime and put somebody friendlier in this place. If we could do it quickly and cleanly, and ultimately like without that much expenditure of blood or resources on our side. But also, I'm not, I I don't know if I personally would have let it get to this point either, because it's like, sure, we've been on, Iran has been hostile to us for a while now, but for decades. But that's because it's because we've been engaged, involved in a lot of Middle Eastern conflicts and political difficulties that like we probably really shouldn't have been in the first place. We probably should have just taken a more hands-off approach and not gotten ourselves, all entrenched in these difficult situations and these quagmires. But what's done is done. Obviously, there's only so much we can do at this point. But my point was, people who consider themselves non-interventionalists, and they say like, oh no, we shouldn't just unilaterally act and capture, like in the case of Maduro, or like or assassinate. I guess not assassinate, but use a decapitation strike to eliminate a head of state, like in the case of Khamenei. People who say, who are opposed to that, like, okay, so that's fair. Like, that's a totally fair position. There's nothing wrong with that. But then I find a lot of these people are also the same people who think that, like you have to oppose what you consider to be evil at all times, in all ways, or else you are also, essentially being evil or allowing evil to flourish, which is also a totally legitimate position. I mean, I think it can easily lead to, extreme behavior that might be unwise, but, in and of itself, like just saying you must oppose you must oppose evil wherever you find it, like that's fair in and of itself. So both of these are fine positions, like, but I think they don't mesh well together, because like we have this, as the United States, we have this enormously powerful, expensive military that we really don't like use for much. And if we can eliminate brutal dictatorships with a minimum of bloodshed and quickly and cleanly, well, if you think that evil must be opposed everywhere you find it, and you think that if someone can do something good, then they must do something good, morally and ethically speaking, then I just think it follows that that by that logic, operating on that set of ethical principles, that these people should also support, eliminating brutal dictators.